Hi, welcome to all. I'm Ilana Levey, a managing director at Gallup, and we're very excited to host this important and very inspiring discussion about well-being through cooking, global insights into cooking enjoyment and eating together. I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Gallup and the Ajinomoto Group, a leading global food company dedicated to promoting healthy living through its motto, Eat Well, Live Well, collaborated to understand the role of cooking and communal eating in people's lives globally. And we fielded this research in over 140 countries as part of the 2022 Gallup World Poll, where we annually ask people around the world about a wide range of topics, including perceptions of their current and future lives and their sense of well-being. We're really excited to introduce for the first time the results of the Ajinomoto Group survey module. And this will be the first time that there's been a global measurement of cooking enjoyment. We have some really fascinating insights to share around the relationship between enjoyment of cooking and regular communal dining with familiar people and how that's impacted subjective well-being and life evaluation. We have a very, very distinguished panel to help us walk through the results and understand their importance. We're honored to be joined by Mr. Taro Fujie, the CEO of the Ajinomoto Group, by Nemeth, a senior consultant and account leader at Gallup, by Professor Jan-Emmanuel Neve, who is the director of the Wellbeing Research Center at Oxford University, by David Eisenberg, a director of culinary nutrition and a professor at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and by Daren Howell, the vice president of research intelligence at the Springer Nature Group. We also wanted to let all of our participants, because we have attendees from across the world, that we have a new app through our Zoom interface called Worldly. And through the Worldly app, you can have a translation of today's webinar. And you can find the Worldly app at the bottom of your screen in the app section. If you click on it, you can choose from a variety of languages to follow along and see a transcription in your native language. So thank you again for joining. Please use the Q&A function for any questions or clarification points or comments that you'd like to make. And I'd like to turn it over to Taro from the Ajinomoto Group to introduce us to this research.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for participating in Ajinomoto Gallup webinar today. My name is Taro Fujie. I am the CEO of Ajinomoto Group. I am very, very exciting, and I am very happy to be here. Anyway, our story began in 1908 when Dr. Kikunae Ikeda, who wanted to improve the nutrition of the Japanese people, discovered umami, and company founder Saburosuke Suzuki commercialized it as Ajinomoto. Even now, over a century later, the founding aspiration of eat well, live well is being carried forward in the form of Ajinomoto Group Creating Shared Value, ASV, an initiative aimed at creating both social and economic value while helping to resolve social issues. In the rapidly changing and unpredictable business environment of today, the purpose in which we are grounded is becoming all the more important. We have now evolved the Ajinomoto Group's purpose to contribute to the well-being of all human beings, our society, and our planet with amino science. As one of the company's key initiatives for realize people's well-being, we are promoting activities that contribute to subjective well-being by encouraging the joy of cooking and eating together. While there is widespread evidence concerning the relationship between food, nutrition, and health, or physical well-being, there was insufficient evidence concerning the relationship between food and subjective well-being. With this mind, Ajinomoto Corporation partnered with Gallup, using the Gallup World Poll to conduct the first worldwide study on the relationship between enjoying cooking and eating together with subjective well-being. The result showed that frequency eating with others contributed to subjective well-being. Those who would like to know more, please look forward to the introduction from Gallup Hui-san. I have enjoyed cooking since elementary school and have made meals for many people. Seeing the smile of people enjoying my meal always brings me joy as well. The essence of happiness is such that the more happiness you give to others, the happier you feel. I still enjoy making appetizers every once in a while. I am very happy that this research has revealed on a global scale that food contributes to subjective well-being. My childhood experiences have seemingly been confirmed by the Gallup survey data. I am really looking forward to discussing food and well-being with Dr. Yang, Dr. David, and Mr. Daren. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Taro, for your inspiring leadership in helping to feed the world delicious food and promoting happiness and well-being. Wei, over to you to walk us through the more detailed findings of this important research collaboration.
Thank you, Ilana. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm here today to provide you an update on our report entitled Wellbeing Through Cooking, Global Insights into Cooking Enjoyment and Eating Together. So this is a report from the joint study on a survey conducted by Ajinomoto Group and Gallup in 2023. So before we started this joint study, we had a set of questions in mind: what the role of cooking and communal eating is in our sense of well-being. And we asked ourselves, do people around the world find joy when cooking? And is this universal, or does it shift from countries to country or from one demographic to the other? And we also wondered whether cooking affects well-being and if it contributes meaningfully to how we perceive our lives and futures. Can cooking be a key ingredient to a fulfilled life? And lastly, we also wanted to turn to the social connectedness aspect. We wanted to know how important it is for people to share a meal with friends and family. Are these moments fundamental to feeling connected and experiencing joy? Are those who often eat alone missing out on these benefits? And we understand these questions are at the core of the Ajinomoto Group's mission to help people eat well, live well. And we were hoping by exploring these topics, we will learn the broader social and emotional impacts of our dining habits. So today, as we present this research, we invite you to think about these aspects of our daily life and consider their implication of yourself and people around you. And the answers, which we will explore together, may guide us towards a deeper understanding of the universal human experience. So let's first take a quick look at this survey we conducted and the methodology behind it. We reached out to people around the world with 3 very straightforward questions. How much do they enjoy cooking? And how much do they have lunch or dinner with someone they knew in the past 7 days? We kept these questions simple on purpose so we could compare what people feel and do in different countries with different cultural backgrounds. And these questions were included in the Gallup World Poll 2022. And as Ilana already mentioned, Gallup World Poll is an annual survey that has been gathering representative data from across the world since 2005. Over 140,000 people from more than 140 countries shared their experiences with us. Now, let's take a quick look at the first question. We asked people, think about the past 7 days in general. Did you enjoy cooking? And if the respondents said they didn't cook in the past 7 days, we also have that option. So globally, the survey revealed a majority of the people, 58%, enjoyed cooking, with 17% indicating the opposite and 24% reported that they didn't cook at all in the past week, with this group largely being men. And in fact, 40% of the men enjoyed cooking, and matching the percentage of who didn't cook at all. And women consistently reported greater enjoyment in cooking, with over 70% across nearly all regions, except Eastern Asia, where the number dips to 59%. We also looked at the regional differences, and it showed significant variation. In North America, Northern, Southern, and Western Europe, around 3/4 of respondents enjoyed cooking. In contrast, this figure stood at about half in other regions. And in the report, we've taken a very detailed look at the regional breakdowns as well as differences by income, age, employment status, education level, and urbanicity. I won't go into too much details here given the time limit, but I encourage you to look at our reports if you are interested in these results. Now, let's turn our attention to Japan, the home country of the Ajinomoto Group. The survey found that just under half of the residents, 49%, reported enjoyed cooking, below the global average by nearly 10 percentage points. As common as in many other places, we also see a notable gender divide. In Japan, you can see 63% of women expressed enjoyment in cooking, while only 34% of the men share the same sentiment. Among the 5 Eastern countries we surveyed in the 2022 Gallup World Poll, Japan's level of cooking enjoyment fell in the middle, below Mongolia and Hong Kong, but above South Korea and Taiwan. And however, Japan did stand out among these countries in one area, that is about 34 percentage point difference between genders in cooking participation, which was the largest in among all the Eastern Asian countries. So the important question is, does enjoyment from cooking translate to a greater sense of well-being? We examined this question from several angles using items on the Gallup World Poll related to an individual's quality of life, for example, Life Evaluation Index. And we found out that globally, individuals who said they generally enjoyed cooking were substantially more likely to be thriving in their life evaluation than those who didn't enjoy or didn't cook. And nearly 1 in 3 people, that's 31%, found cooking enjoyable, rated their lives positively enough to be considered as thriving. That's compared to 21% of those who said they didn't. And if you're not familiar with the Life Evaluation Index, I've tried to explain here how we categorize thriving, struggling, and suffering. So basically, we ask people to rate their current life, future life using a scale from 0 to 10. Those who rated their current life from 7 points and above, and future life from 8 points and above, are considered as thriving. And back to our finding, while this suggests a concrete relationship between an individual's cooking enjoyment and thriving, we may suspect maybe that's because people who enjoyed cooking generally share a similar characteristics, for example, high education background or higher income. That is both are associated with a higher rate of thriving. So we wanted to make sure that this relationship still stands if we control all the other variables in the analysis. Therefore, we used a regression analysis and we included a range of personal demographics and other characteristics that may affect how individuals rate their lives, including household income, gender, age cohort, education, employment status, marital status, and place of residence. And the result is very exciting. We find that people who said they enjoyed cooking are 1.2 times more likely to be thriving in their life evaluation than those either who didn't cook or didn't enjoy cooking. This means the individual's feeling about cooking is statistically significant to their overall well-being, even after controlling for a lot of other important factors. Another quality of life measures on the Gallup World Poll is the Positive Experience Index. This index looks at how people felt emotionally just the day before they answered the survey. We asked people if they felt well rested, were treated with respect, had laughed or smiled, learned something new or interesting, or experienced enjoyment. This is a score from 0 to 100. Again, it turned out that people who liked cooking seem to have a bit more positive vibes going on. They scored an average of 72.3 on this index, and this is quite higher than the 62.4 points of those who didn't find cooking fun, and this difference is quite big. So in this report, besides looking at how much people enjoyed cooking, we also explored the impact of sharing meals with people they know on well-being, and we categorize people in groups based on how often they eat with someone they know. We label those who had dinner or lunch with someone they knew at least 4 times a week or as frequent social diners. And if they share lunch or dinner 1 to 3 times a day with someone, then they fall into the moderate social diners. And there's also the last group who didn't have either lunch or dinner with someone they knew in the past 7 days. So a few findings to share with you quickly. Again, our finding shows that frequent social diners were substantially and significantly more likely to be thriving in life evaluation, and this is true for both men and women. And frequent social diners were also more likely to score higher for the Gallup Positive Experience Index. And another very important quality of life dimension that is positively affected by eating with someone they know is feelings of social connectedness. This is a concept measured by the Gallup World Poll Social Life Index, also using a score from 0 to 100. And as you can see on these charts, sharing meal even 1 to 3 times a week with someone you know already significantly increased the social connectedness score compared to those who didn't share a meal with others. And those who frequently eat socially had even greater improvements. And this is nearly 10 points higher than those who didn't eat with others once. Okay, lastly, I would like to draw your attention to some findings on those who usually eat alone, the solitary diners. We focused on those who didn't have either lunch or dinner once. So the difference is in the last group we were talking about, it was someone who didn't have lunch or who didn't have dinner, but here we're talking about someone who didn't have either lunch or dinner once with friends or family, and compare them with those who at least share 1 meal with someone they know in the past week. And we find out that a majority of them, about 55%, are from high-income countries. This makes a disproportional share of the overall population for this of the general population. And for this study, we primarily focus our analysis on the solitary diners in high-income countries. And in these countries, they are 3 times more likely to rate their current life and future life so low that they can be considered as suffering. And that's 15% of solitary diners compared to just 5% of people who shared at least 1 meal with someone in the past week. And in the middle, you can see that using social life index, solitary diners score 75 out of 100, lower than the score of 82 for those who ate at least once with someone else. And also people who eat alone tend to rate their physical health lower than those who eat with others, as shown in the Gallup Personal Health Index. These findings match up with other research that suggests feeling lonely can really affect your health, both mentally and physically. While some people might choose to eat alone, it looks like a lot of them don't have a choice. And this is especially true in high-income countries where, I guess, more people live alone because they are living longer. So lastly, this just want to quickly mention that this study, we believe that really showed us something interesting. Cooking and eating with friends or family isn't just everyday activities. It actually makes us happier and more satisfied with life. And people who enjoy cooking and regularly share meals with others aren't just feeding themselves, but also experience a boost in their overall well-being. And this seems to be true for everyone, no matter what their age, gender, or is, or where they live. And on the flip side, the trend of solitary dining is linked with negative effects on well-being. And this identifies a critical area for policy intervention. And I'll stop here and give the floor back to Ilana. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hui, for that very engaging and comprehensive overview of this research. I was struck in your presentation that we learned from these findings that there appears to be a very meaningful connection between cooking enjoyment and subjective well-being, even after you considered a wide range of demographic factors around someone's individual background or living circumstance. As you thought about the totality of this research, was there a specific finding that surprised you or felt counterintuitive to what you expected going into the study?
Thank you. Yes, that's the part that exactly you just mentioned. So at the beginning, we hypothesized that cooking enjoyment might have a positive relation with individuals' well-being, but we had doubt whether this relationship would withstand greater examination. So our concern was that the apparent enjoyment of cooking could be attributed by factors such as high income or education levels, both of which are known to contribute to the overall well-being. So we anticipated a superficial relationship between cooking enjoyment and well-being. However, while we used the regression model, when we dig deeper, we find out that even after controlling for a large range of key variables, this relationship between cooking enjoyment and well-being still stands. And those who enjoyed cooking are 20% more likely to be thriving in their life evaluation than those who didn't. So this is a very inspiring findings, and I believe even more so for the Ajinomoto Group, who strive to improve people's well-being through cooking.
Excellent. Thank you, Hui. Jan, I'd like to turn it over to you now. In line with past research, this Ajinomoto Group survey with Gallup found that there's a positive relationship between subjective well-being, obviously a concept that you're a renowned expert on, and sharing a meal with familiar individuals on a frequent basis. From your perspective, why is it and how can frequently eating with friends and family be a source of positive change in a person's life? And I'm wondering if you could tie it into the concept of social connectedness, which we know plays an important part in the science of well-being.
Thank you, Ilana, and thank you everybody else for the opportunity to contribute. I think a very old philosopher from the Greek Isles called Aristotle, more than 2,000 years ago, told us that human beings are social animals. And I think he was very right, and we sometimes forget that in our society these days. And I cannot think of a more frequent, obvious way of connecting and coming together as social animals, but around the dining table, whether it's lunch or dinner. And I'm so grateful to Gallup and the Ajinomoto Group for putting their shoulders behind this global research, because it has never been shown to this extent that cooking together, enjoying doing so, and doing so socially has the impact it has on human well-being. And that's really, really powerful. So thank you. I also want to take advantage of this moment to say that we at Oxford have now independently replicated the results that were just shared by Huey. We benefit from the support from Ajinomoto, and our Ajinomoto research fellow, Alberto Prati, has run the numbers on his own and has also found there to be a positive correlation between enjoying cooking and well-being, whether measured through positive emotions, the lack of negative, or life evaluations. But the striking result really sits, from our perspective, with the social connectedness elements that you alluded to, Ilana. It is very strong, the coefficients that have come through between having lunch or dinner together with friends or family, leading to, or at least being very strongly correlated with, subjective well-being or how we feel about life. What to me is, while this result is so powerful, having been in the field of well-being science now for almost 10 years, it is not entirely surprising. Obviously, Aristotle pointed it out, but in our studies of subjective well-being, we find over and over that people underestimate the importance of social connectedness and social support. And again, we get this through friends and family and colleagues in the workplace, and oftentimes around the dinner table or a lunch table at work or at home or in our schools. And so I think this will lead to some really profound implications on the policy front as well, across families, across schools, and across businesses. I think I want to, the two elements that I want to allude to here are, as Gallup knows very well, when you study workplace well-being, you find something very similar to some extent, which is that when people think about what makes them happy at work or satisfied or content with their job, they will think of things such as money or flexibility. But really, when you run the analyses, just like Huey and others have done at Gallup, you find that it is having a friend at work, having social connections, a sense of belonging at work. And that is something we've picked up in our research as well. So for me, our findings in workplace well-being, both on the Gallup side, the Oxford side, very much echo and validate, I think, the results that have now been shown for the first time in the context of eating together. Finally, maybe as our Gallup friends know very well, we're working so hard together on producing the next World Happiness Report. And there too, we find at a macro level, the importance of what we've called social support, which gets measured in the Gallup World Poll through having friends to rely on or family to rely on in case of trouble. Now, these relationships, to be able to rely on people, those relationships are formed most of the time around the lunch or dinner table, at work, at home, or in schools. And so there's no question where this sort of comes from, the importance of social support. This is eating together is probably the most operational element underpinning social connectedness, social support. Let me just leave you with essentially a really important fact. That social support or social connectedness in societies is at the same level as GDP in terms of explaining variation between societies in terms of population well-being. So if we look at the highest level of the World Happiness Report, which tries to explain differences in population well-being, and you find that social support is critical there, well, one of the drivers of generating social support at the population level obviously comes through the extraordinary findings that are being uncovered thanks to the Ajinomoto module in the World Poll. And those do happen through building that social support on the ground, whether it's amongst families, friends, workplaces, or schools, frankly. So thank you again for all of this, and I look forward to continuing the discussion and the research.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jan, for contextualizing the importance of these findings and the overall well-being and social connectedness science. David, I'm going to turn it over to you now. And of course, we just heard from Jan about the value of social connectedness in terms of communal eating. How do you see this report's findings interacting with your work as an expert and leader on culinary nutrition? And we know that you lead quite a few initiatives on culinary and lifestyle education.
Thank you, Ilana. I also want to thank Ajinomoto and Gallup. It's an honor to be on this distinguished panel. You know, this is a fascinating conversation for me. I have the curious distinction of being the product of both the food community, people who cook for a living, and the biomedical, scientific, public health community where I reside. By way of background, I grew up the son and grandson of professional bakers who were excellent cooks, and I learned to cook and bake before I could read. I fell in love with cooking. I've cooked every day of my life. It's the way I express myself. It's the way I relax. It's the way I connect. Tragically, when I was 10, my dad, age 39, died of a heart attack. And unfortunately, my 3 living grandparents died of unrelated diseases that same year. And as was the custom in the 1960s, no one discussed it. So I sought an education in medicine. To my amazement, learning to be a doctor in the 1970s and 80s, as I joined the Harvard faculty where I've been for more than 40 years, almost no physicians ever talked about nutrition. Almost none discussed food or cooking. And almost none of them understood what I understood intuitively about the power of cooking and eating, cooking for and eating with others you care about. So let me fast forward. Over the last 25 years, I've done a number of things, one of which is hold an annual conference for health professionals, bringing together chefs and nutrition scientists to teach people how to eat and cook and live healthier lives. The power of learning better nutrition may be impacted by cooking. So one of the questions we haven't addressed is whether cooking impacts dietary quality. I can tell you anecdotally, having brought up my 3 adult children, from the time they could stand, they cooked with me every night. They choose different items on menus because they know how they're cooked. Does cooking at a young age, as Taro mentioned, impact a person for a lifetime? Not only about the joy of making food for people you love, but also does it tell you how food is prepared, what the ingredients are, and what might be healthier for you? So I've taught this conference for 20 years now, Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives. More than 7,000 health professionals have gone through it. And each time, when you teach a physician who doesn't know how to hold a cooking knife, teach them how to cook and dismiss their anxiety, their being overwhelmed by the fear of cooking, and make it easy and inviting. It's amazing how transformational it can be. And I have hundreds, if not thousands, of notes from health professionals saying cooking changed their lives because it changed how they cooked with and for their families and how they would encourage their patients to learn to cook in order to pursue healthier diets. We do not know as of yet whether learning to cook, in addition to improving connectedness and perhaps serving as an antidote to global loneliness, does it improve dietary quality? Does it improve clinical outcomes? Do people with prediabetes or diabetes do better when they learn to cook? Can it reduce the global burden of chronic disease and healthcare costs? These are all interrelated questions. The thing I want to leave you with is that in the United States, this has become a national conversation in the last 2 years. This food is medicine movement, as it's called in the United States, is something that the White House has stimulated. Going back to 2022, the US Congress passed a resolution demanding that the medical profession insist that all physicians be trained in nutrition for the first time. Because right now, doctors are not required to demonstrate competencies in advising patients about nutrition or cooking or food. The congressional resolution says they must. Next, the White House held a conference on nutrition and hunger and talked about food as medicine and teaching kitchens and cooking for the first time. Later in 2022 and into 2023, the US National Institutes of Health discussed the prospect of someday funding centers of excellence in food as medicine to join the research that Gallup has initiated to say, what is the impact of teaching people a different relationship to food? Will it impact their behaviors, clinical outcomes, costs? By way of extension, I would also say, if you teach somebody how to cook, you teach them about the ingredients, why not also teach them about the impact on the global environment? Because every young person on the planet cares about that much more than they do the worry about developing diabetes or obesity. So the US government in the last 2 months has held 2 meetings, one at the White House and one at the Department of Health and Human Services, the first inaugural Food as Medicine Summit with 2 secretaries, one of health and one of agriculture, saying, how do we do this differently? And one of the strategies that is emerging is not only to improve access to healthier foods for people who lack access to healthy whole foods, but also to teach people a different relationship to food and lifestyle, to teach people how to eat and cook and move and think more healthfully. That is happening in the United States at a global level. And I think it synergizes with everything we're talking about today on the role of cooking and wellness and happiness. I'll leave it there and see if you have additional questions.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing those really meaningful personal reflections and tying it into that exciting and really important momentum that you've helped to lead in the public health world. Daren, I wanted to turn to you. You have also been privileged to work with the Ajinomoto Group on researching scientifically supported links between cooking and well-being, and was wondering if you could share a little bit more about what you looked into and some of the main findings of your report, specifically around the positive psychological impact of eating frequently with others.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ilana, and hello, everybody, and a pleasure to be on this panel. Thanks to Gallup and thanks to Ajinomoto as well. For those in the audience that don't know, my name is Daren Howell and I work for Nature and Springer Nature. We're one of the largest scientific publishers in the world, and we worked with Ajinomoto to review the science in this area. And it's an absolute pleasure to do so because we love work that has great impact, has a big effect and is reproducible. And I think you've seen this already in the work that Gallup have done and the work that's been spoken about before. And I'll talk to you about some of the other studies that researchers have done that we uncovered in the report. So both reports as well will be linked at the end of the presentation. So you'll be able to read both of them and get into the detail a lot more. But what we did is we worked with Ajinomoto to review the existing research on cooking and well-being, and specifically around the psychological impacts. And what we saw was that the existing research showed a lot of benefits beyond what people expect, which is the nutrient-dense foods are improving health and well-being. Sharing food, scientifically known as commensality, we found in the research fosters a sense of belonging and social connectedness. And we saw that in different studies. We saw that in Chile, and we saw that in studies performed in New Zealand. So quite different places in the world, but never had it been done globally. And that research that Gallup has done is fantastic to reproduce that. We also saw research in Thailand, where about 40,000 people showed that frequently eating main meals alone is associated with unhappiness. Again, that reinforces what we've seen today. And what we saw is that the positive psychological impact of eating frequently with others is also possible with a healthy body and mind. And you need the nutrition as well to support your body and mind. So healthy brain function is important. It's important to eat well to reduce inflammation. It's important to eat protein, and all of that helps the psychological impact of food as well as the social connectedness that we saw earlier. Again, just to repeat some of the findings that the Gallup results showed, we saw that people from that this happened across all different demographics. Better education. There are differences by region and gender, and there were differences through COVID as well, some natural experiments there. But what we saw is that COVID drove eating more meals together at home, but also that maybe the quality of those meals changed quite a lot. Moving into the home, this is where we eat together mostly. And we saw eating at home as being a benefit, and we saw that particularly for children, with the overall impact of eating more frequently at home being of benefit to children, which we've again, these things are intuitive, and it's great to see the research back those up. But sometimes what we saw is that, and we see this in the research through COVID as well, that more eating at home may have also introduced inequalities in terms of who was doing the cooking. So there's different aspects to it that you might look at there. And so more research is needed into all of these areas to be able to get the right policy, the right impacts there, so that people can benefit from eating together. And we also saw that making meals at home might be on the decline, particularly in the richer countries. And again, can we change that in some way? Eating, I think one of the studies cited, households in the developed world have likely shifted away from home cooking foods to ready-to-eat foods. And then in the United Kingdom, we found that home cooked food represented more than half the food budget in 1980, less than a third in 2000. So you can see those shifts there in terms of home cooking. And maybe that's something we need to address. I think some of the modern ways of life, removing some of those things that Jan mentioned, those very natural social connected things that we used to do in the past. And then the last thing that I really like to draw out is that this should start young. If we're eating at home, if we're eating with children, if children learn the habit of eating at home and eating together, then that's something that we've seen in the research carries through life. And I think, when we're thinking about the lessons from this research, if we can get the education in, with families, with children, then this is a lifelong benefit to their health. As Jan mentioned, that benefit is really very strong, comparable to significant wealth benefits and other things. So these are things that we can do for free, and it's great that this audience and Ajinomoto and Gallup are shining a light on it, and we're very pleased to be part of that.
Thank you so much, Daren. That was very interesting context, and thank you for raising that rich body of additional research, including research that you've led with the Ajinomoto Group to help understand these important findings. Hui, I wanted to come back to you about an important concept of solitary diners. And when you look at the Q&A in the chat, there's a lot of attention to the solitary diners. Some people, though, might not be as familiar with this concept of a solitary diner, and these are people for a variety of different reasons who habitually eat alone. Can you tell us a little bit more about why Gallup and the Ajinomoto Group wanted to focus on this group? What makes them so interesting, and what more do we know about solitary diners?
Sure, thanks. So, Ajinomoto's philosophy, eating well, living well, and in this study, we explored people who eat well and live well, and we were wondering, what about the population that not fitting into either category? And solitary diners, we believe, are at the risk of not fitting into either category. And the most concerning part is the number of this group is on the rise quite dramatically in the high-income countries. For example, in Japan, we saw data that a single person household accounted for a quarter of the total household in 1995. And this figure climbed to over 35% in 2015. And some researchers projected that by 2040, up to 50% of the adult population in Japan will be living alone. This means a significant portion of the society in Japan could be at the risk of eating alone every day. So, from lots of the existing research, we know that loneliness can have profound impacts on one's life, and we have reasons after this study to believe that eating alone may have deeper implications for individuals' well-being and mental health, which is really quite concerning given the growing number of this group. Yeah. And also just want to take this opportunity here to highlight that in this report, we dived into the high-income countries, and we only scratched the surface of this issue. And our goal is really to broaden our research to include a larger population from a range of different cultural contexts, and to investigate if this impact on well-being across the culture, and if it what's the impact on wider topics. So more to come.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Hui, and thank you for setting the stage with the particular Japan context on solitary diners. That's a good segue to you, Taro. We would love for you to reflect just at this point in the discussion and everything that we've heard, a little bit more about your future work, your global vision in taking well-being through cooking and eating with others to new heights.
Thank you for asking. So, using the results obtained from this survey and data from the 2022 GWP, Ajinomoto Group will support interdisciplinary research conducted by the University of Oxford Wellbeing Research Centre in UK, in which the university founded the Ajinomoto Research Fellowship in February 2023. The fellowship seeks to establish a platform for knowledge exchange on the empirical science of well-being, supporting Ajinomoto Group in exploring areas of interest, including the relationship between food and well-being. The director of this center, Professor Yang, is an authority on well-being research and has served as an editor of the World Happiness Report. Dr. David promotes research into the health benefit of cooking. Together with Dr. Yang and Dr. David, we would like to spread the word about the value food has to contribute to people's well-being globally, thereby further increasing the value of food. Ajinomoto Group aims to achieve its purpose by making full use of the result of this research on the relationship between food and well-being in the field of food and wellness, one of the company's growth areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing those exciting developments, which I think will really promote well-being in the world and using your business platform to promote so much good in the world. Thank you for that. David, I wanted to come back to you. And as we looked at the global findings that Hui presented, we saw that although cooking is broadly popular, there remains a substantial proportion of people worldwide who do not enjoy the practice, and even a larger percentage, mainly men, but also women, who do not engage with cooking at all. You talked about some of your experiences working with medical doctors and people in the public health community to promote cooking, but more broadly, what are some thoughts about engaging that substantial proportion of the world, and in some countries increasing, who don't enjoy cooking and just choose not to cook?
It's a great question. I think most of it relates to people feeling intimidated. And the reality is we've had 2 or 3 generations where people are not living in 3-generation homes anymore. They're not learning to cook from mother, father, or grandmother, or grandfather. So they become teenagers and they don't know what to do if you give them a box of fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, and legumes. They have no idea. I have seen this thousands of times in this conference I've directed, Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives. We've also launched something called the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative in the United States. 60 institutions, predominantly universities and medical schools, that use kitchens to teach people nutrition, cooking, exercise, mindfulness, and behavior change. The theory is, if you invite people in, many people are intrigued about cooking, but they don't know where to begin. So you have to make it easy for them. You have to make it inviting. You have to show them within minutes it can be fun, quick, doable, affordable, fabulous, and they enjoy it. And every time I've taught adults, doctors are just proxies for other adults. Every time I've shown people, you can do it, we will help you, they're changed because they never thought it could be so easy. And if they do it in groups with other people, speaking of the connectedness part, it's more fun. And when they lay out a banquet that they've all learned to cook in an hour, it explodes. It's a transformational moment. Coming back to another theme that Taro began us with, if you teach this to children, they learn it early. And I have my own personal theories that teaching people to cook at an early age is like teaching people to ski or swim at an early age. It's much easier for a young person to learn these things and do them well. And then as they make foods for people they love, that positive feedback that Taro articulated so brilliantly, that's the engine that keeps them wanting to learn to become better cooks for the rest of their lives. But I think it's a matter of assuming that somebody is intimidated, bringing them in, holding them by the hands and saying, you can do it, let's do it together.
Thank you so much. Very inspiring. And I know there's quite a few parents on this call as well, and thinking about prioritizing teaching children how to cook, I think is so powerful. Jan, I wanted to turn back to you and ask you a follow-up question. We saw in these data, and of course research that you've done as well, that a greater number of people around the world live alone. It's an increasing proportion. And often it's not an active choice that they've made, but they might have changing life circumstances, which are difficult, such as the death of a household member, a divorce. What do you think are some of the different ways that practitioners, leaders in the well-being space can engage with our findings on solitary diners to really tackle this serious challenge for improving the overall well-being of communities with lots of individual households? And we have many questions in the chat really getting at this point that many people are solitary diners, not because they want to, but because they have to. And what are some thoughts about engaging with that group?
Thank you, Ilana, and people amongst the participants raising this. I think the U.S. Surgeon General has coined this the loneliness pandemic, and we'll have the privilege of meeting him actually next month when he visits London. We'll hear more from it. I think it's a major issue, and especially given what well-being science tells us about the importance of social connectedness, and the Ajinomoto module on the World Poll shows it better than I've ever seen it before, and so close to home where we cook and eat our meals together. We know it from the workplace. We know it from the global population level. That we've never seen it so close to home, that the importance of social connectedness and driving well-being. I want to get back to this, but I've been really inspired, honestly and genuinely, in this webinar. And Daren also mentioned something about the policy implications. Oftentimes, policymakers come to us, myself, my mentor, Richard Layard, and all of you guys at Gallup and many others, saying, so if we have to take well-being seriously, what should we do? What policy proposals would you make? And then we typically go into improving access to mental health treatment, or focusing on job and job protection, so very high-minded things. And I'm going to be adding something to the list from now on, which is something, and I owe it to Daren, frankly, I've never seen such a cost-effective intervention, but trying to make sure that people have access to good food and that the process of how they eat it, which is costless and at the same time priceless, in the sense that it's how you make it. If you enjoy putting it together, if you do it with others, that is a sure way to improving well-being, and is a hell of a lot more cost-effective, pardon my language, than having to change the labor market or having to beef up the National Health Service even more. And obviously that needs to be done, but still it's all very costly. And so there's a preventative element, the prevention element to all of this. And I know, David, you think about this a lot, of course. I think, the reason why I'm becoming so excited about this, and again, thank you to Gallup and the Ajinomoto Group, is because food, how you eat it, the access to it, plays in on the two most important elements that we should all be trying to optimize on, which are 1, health, and 2, well-being. essentially living better longer, to borrow the motto of our friends at Blue Zones. Or the way we now approach it in policy is something called well-being adjusted life years. So the things that ultimately matters how long we live and the quality of the lives we live. So it's essentially the simple multiplication of length of life times life satisfaction. That gives you a well-be or a well-being adjusted life year. And that is what policymakers and all of us should try and contribute to. And lo and behold, food, good food, access to it, and the way you make it and put it together and with whom you do it, play out significantly on both the health aspect and the well-being aspect. So I come away from this research, this webinar, really, really excited and fired up by the importance of food, access to it, cooking together, and looking for behavioral ways, nudges, to try and make sure that communities do come together. So I know I haven't actually answered your question, Ilana, but maybe one idea would be communal kitchens and policies, again, costless, but to try and invite people who may be lonely, if they're willing to come forward, or can be nudged in ways that are very subtle and do not induce any type of stigma, come forward into communal kitchens where they can cook and come together. I work a lot with another partner of Gallup called Blue Zones, and they work on these things in practice on the ground across American societies. And I think it's that kind of work that is really important. And again, costless on the policy front and priceless on health and well-being fronts.
Thank you so much, Jan. I feel like you've outlined that, holy grail of what we're looking for in policy interventions, highly effective, highly inexpensive, and thank you for inspiring us. And I think it was a really great ending for our conversation today. I wanted to share a comment that came in through one of the participants today, and really as a thank you to our panelists and especially to the Ajinomoto Group for inspiring people today to prioritize cooking, prioritize fostering well-being through food with their families and friends. Thank you so much. I do relate to what was covered today. I'm Hispanic and cooking is part of our culture. I really enjoy cooking and coming together with friends and family. It brings me joy, so much joy and happiness as well. So thank you everyone for spending the time to join us today. I hope you felt inspired to have a delicious home-cooked meal tonight with someone that you love and to prioritize making it an important part of your lives and your family's lives. We will place in the chat resources for exploring the Ajinomoto and Gallup report on these findings on our research hub, as well as the research that Daren talked about in collaboration with the Ajinomoto Group. And if you were inspired today, I hope that you'll talk about this with friends and family and help foster that well-being and joy through cooking movement that the Ajinomoto Group is starting. So thank you so much for joining us today.